In the hallowed halls of the Virginia State Courthouse, a scene unfolded that could have been ripped from the pages of a Hollywood script, yet it was all too real. At the center of this drama stood Clint Eastwood, the 94-year-old titan of cinema, his weathered face a map of defiance and resolve. The courtroom, a crucible of law and reputation, buzzed with tension as Eastwood faced a legal onslaught that threatened not only his legacy, but the very principle of free speech. This was no mere trial. It was a clash between the machinery of justice and the unyielding spirit of an icon, a battle where truth hung in the balance. The unexpected arrival of U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, armed with a federal motion, turned the proceedings into a spectacle that would echo far beyond the courthouse walls. The story began with a documentary, a project Eastwood had poured his heart into. Titled with the raw honesty that defined his career, the film exposed a media conglomerate's manipulation of information, a scheme that stifled public discourse and undermined the First Amendment. Through incisive interviews and damning internal documents, Eastwood's work struck a nerve, its trailer alone igniting a firestorm of controversy. The conglomerate, a titan of influence, retaliated swiftly, filing a lawsuit that accused Eastwood of spreading misinformation and inciting unrest. They demanded he surrender all production materials, a request he met with a steely refusal. If they want the truth, they can see it in theaters. This defiance set him on a collision course with Judge Douglas Whitaker, a figure whose impartiality was whispered to be compromised by personal grudges. Whitaker, presiding over Courtroom 4, carried the weight of authority in his deep, measured voice. His elevated bench seemed a throne from which he wielded power, yet his gaze betrayed a bitterness toward Eastwood. Legal circles murmured that Whitaker harbored resentment from a past film where a villain bore an uncanny resemblance to one of his political allies. Whether true or not, the judge's demeanor suggested this trial was personal. The atmosphere was taut, the audience silent as Eastwood took the witness stand, his gray suit exuding dignity, his eyes unyielding. Whitaker demanded clarity on the film's content, accusing Eastwood of obstructing justice with evasive answers. "My film reflects the truth," Eastwood replied, his voice low and gravelly, a echo of his cowboy roles. "What more does the court need?" The judge's response was swift and severe. "Mr. Eastwood, the court finds you in contempt for deliberate noncompliance. Arrest him immediately." The clink of handcuffs reverberated, a sound that stunned the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously, capturing the image of a cinematic legend shackled, yet standing tall. Fans outside, clutching banners of Eastwood as the High Plains drifter, roared in protest under the blazing sun. Social media erupted, with number sign "Stand with Eastwood" trending as supporters, from Dirty Harry devotees to admirers of Million Dollar Baby, rallied behind him. The press was divided. Some branded him a conservative agitator, others a defender of civil liberties. Then, like a scene from one of Eastwood's own films, Pam Bondi rose from the spectator seats. Her black suit radiated authority, her voice calm yet resolute. "Your Honor, the Department of Justice objects. This lawsuit violates constitutional free speech rights." Holding aloft a federal filing, she declared, "This is a motion to halt all actions against Mr. Eastwood." The courtroom fell silent, Whitaker's eyes flickering as he reviewed the document. Scattered applause broke out, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel. Bondi's intervention was a game changer, signaling that the Department of Justice, under her leadership, would not let this case become a tool to silence dissent. Eastwood gave her a slight nod, his eyes gleaming with respect. The roots of this legal battle ran deep. Eastwood's documentary had peeled back the curtain on a conglomerate that controlled vast swaths of public information, manipulating narratives to serve its interests. The film's data, sourced from public records, interviews, and legally obtained internal reports, painted a damning picture. Its claim that the conglomerate influenced 70% of public information flow, far exceeding the official 25%, sparked outrage. The conglomerate's lawsuit aimed to bury the film, alleging it was funded by extremist groups and built on stolen data. Prosecutor Eric Samuels, armed with a thick dossier, was confident. Believing Whitaker's apparent bias gave him the upper hand. Bondi, however, saw through the facade. In a late-night meeting at the Department of Justice headquarters in Washington, she sat at the head of a table littered with documents, her eyes sharp as she strategized with her team. Daniel Reeves, a seasoned litigator with silver hair, and Lena Marquez, a young legal prodigy, flanked her. They understood the lawsuit was not just about Eastwood. It was a calculated effort to suppress free speech. Bondi, with over a decade as a prosecutor and former Florida Attorney General, had faced down corporations and politicians alike. Her encounter with Eastwood years ago at a California conference, where she admired his ability to weave truth into art, fueled her resolve. "Whitaker is playing a dangerous game," she said, her voice low. "Arresting Eastwood isn't justice, it's political." Reeves flipped through files, noting, "We have indications the conglomerate approached Whitaker's office before the trial. If we dig deeper, we could expose a conflict of interest." Marquez, swiping on her tablet, added, "I found an internal report from the conglomerate outlining a plan to smear Eastwood and block the film." Bondi's strategy crystallized: prove the film's independence, validate its data, and investigate Whitaker's bias. She tapped her fingers on the table, her mind racing. "We'll use Mia, Eastwood's producer, to confirm transparency. Ryan Holt, the investigative journalist, will verify the data, and we'll prepare a federal investigation into Whitaker." Bondi's team worked through the night, their fluorescent-lit room a fortress of determination. Reeves drafted a brief for the federal attorney, while Marquez scoured the conglomerate's financial records for ties to Whitaker. Bondi outlined the courtroom strategy, knowing victory required more than legal arguments. It demanded public support. She ordered the DOJ's communications team to issue a statement emphasizing their commitment to constitutional rights, carefully avoiding mention of the Whitaker investigation. She also contacted the Office of the Inspector General, requesting a review of Whitaker's rulings for signs of abuse. "If we prove bias," she told Reeves, "Whitaker won't just lose, he'll lose his credibility." Back in the courtroom, the prosecution pressed its case. Samuels, his Navy suit crisp, stood with theatrical confidence. "Mr. Eastwood's film is not art. It's propaganda designed to distort the truth," he declared, holding up documents bearing the conglomerate's logo. He called Dr. Margaret Voss, a media analyst, who claimed the film's figures were exaggerated and could mislead the public. Samuels displayed a chart comparing the film's 70% claim to the official 25%, arguing the discrepancy was intentional. The audience wavered, some swayed by the numbers. Whitaker, his tone leading, pressed Eastwood to explain his data sources. "I made the film based on what I believe is true," Eastwood replied. "My data comes from people brave enough to speak the truth, not polished reports." Whitaker's gavel banged, his voice sharp. "The court does not accept vague statements. Answer specifically or face further measures." Samuels seized the moment, calling Paul Kendrick, a former conglomerate employee who alleged the film's data was stolen. The accusation landed like a grenade, fueling headlines that questioned Eastwood's legacy. Yet Bondi, observing from the spectator seats, whispered to Reeves, "Samuels is boxing him in. We need Holt and Mia ready." She knew the trial was a microcosm of a larger battle against censorship, and she was prepared to fight it to the end. The defense, led by Marquez under Bondi's guidance, mounted a fierce counterattack. Marquez called Mia, the film's producer, who testified that all funding came from Eastwood's personal funds and private investors, with transparent records. She presented documents, accepted into evidence despite Samuel's objections. Next, Ryan Holt, the investigative journalist, took the stand, confirming the film's data was sourced from public records and cross-checked with multiple sources. "The truth doesn't need distortion," Holt said, deflecting Samuel's attempts to paint the film as politically motivated. The audience stirred, sensing the tide turning. Marquez delivered a masterstroke, presenting internal conglomerate emails obtained by Reeves. "Stop Eastwood at all costs," one read. "If that fails, destroy his reputation." The courtroom erupted, Whitaker's gavel struggling to restore order. Samuels, flustered, demanded time to verify the emails, but Marquez pressed on, calling Dr. Emily, a constitutional law expert. Emily affirmed that the film was protected by the First Amendment, dismantling claims of incitement. Bondi, watching Eastwood's nod of respect, whispered to Reeves, "Marquez did well. Now accelerate the Whitaker investigation." As the trial neared its climax, Whitaker's persistence grew suspect. Samuels, desperate to regain ground, demanded Eastwood disclose all donors, alleging extremist funding. Whitaker supported the request, overruling Marquez's objections. "The court has the authority to investigate all aspects of the film's motives," he said, his tone revealing an agenda. Eastwood, unwavering, declared, "I made this film with my own money, and that of people who believe in the truth. No agendas, just the story that needed to be told." His words sparked applause, though Whitaker's gavel silenced it. In a cramped makeshift office near the Virginia State Courthouse, Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney General, stood as a beacon of resolve amid a storm of legal documents. The room, bathed in the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, buzzed with urgency. Bondi's sharp gaze met her team. Daniel Reeves, a seasoned litigator with silver hair and a steely calm honed by decades in federal courts, and Lena Marquez, a young legal prodigy whose swift analysis cut through complexity like a scalpel. The air crackled with the weight of their mission, to defend not just Clint Eastwood, but the very principle of justice. "Whitaker's overreaching," Bondi said, her voice low and resolute, cutting through the room's tension. "He's exposing his bias, and we need evidence to prove he's not impartial. If we don't, this trial becomes a precedent for silencing truth." Reeves, his brow furrowed, sifted through a stack of files, his fingers tracing patterns of judicial misconduct. "The Inspector General's preliminary report is damning," he said, his tone measured but urgent. Two of Whitaker's recent rulings show clear favoritism toward corporate interests over constitutional rights. A full report is due in 48 hours, but it's already pointing to a pattern. Marquez, her eyes locked on a tablet glowing with financial data, added, "I've traced transactions linking the conglomerate to Whitaker's political allies, shell companies, discreet donations. It's subtle, but it's there. If we dig deeper, we'll tie him directly to their agenda." Bondi's jaw tightened, her resolve hardening like steel. "This isn't just about Eastwood," she declared, her voice a vow. "We're defending the foundation of justice. If Whitaker crosses the line, he'll pay, not just in this courtroom, but in history's judgment." The courtroom, a crucible of anticipation, pulsed with the weight of the moment. Judge Douglas Whitaker, his black robe a symbol of authority, ascended his bench, but his once unshakable confidence seemed to falter, his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. The gallery, packed with Eastwood's fans, from grizzled, Dirty Harry devotees to young admirers of Million Dollar Baby, held its breath. Whitaker cleared his throat, his voice steady but tinged with reluctance. "The court has reviewed all arguments, evidence, and testimony," he began, each word measured. "The prosecution has failed to provide compelling evidence that Mr. Eastwood's film contains misinformation or was funded by political groups. There is no basis to sustain the charge of contempt or any wrongdoing. The allegations are dismissed." The courtroom erupted in thunderous applause, a wave of relief defying Whitaker's gavel. "Order!" he barked, but the sound was unstoppable, a chorus of vindication. Prosecutor Eric Samuels slumped at his table, his navy suit rumpled, his head bowed as his case collapsed. Bondi, in the spectator seats, exchanged a subtle nod with Reeves, her eyes glinting with quiet triumph. This was not just Eastwood's victory. It was a triumph for the Department of Justice, a resounding message that free speech would not bow to power. Behind the scenes, Bondi's masterstroke had sealed the outcome. The Inspector General's report, documenting Whitaker's biased rulings and ties to the conglomerate, was sent to the Federal Judicial Oversight Committee. A week later, Whitaker announced his early retirement, a silent admission of defeat cloaked in bureaucratic nicety. The press exploded with headlines, "Eastwood Vindicated. DOJ Champions Free Speech." Leah Carter, a young journalist, penned a searing piece hailing Eastwood as truth's unwavering flame, and Bondi as its strategic guardian. Social media buzzed with the hashtag Eastwood Forever, the victory a symbol of resilience. Outside, Scott Eastwood embraced his father, tears in his eyes. "You did it, Dad," he choked out. Clint, his eyes twinkling, replied, "Not me, the people who believe in truth." In the hallway, Bondi and Eastwood shared a firm handshake, a quiet testament to their shared fight. "You made this a story worth telling," Eastwood said, his voice gravelly but warm. Bondi's faint smile softened her intensity. "I did my job. You gave us a cause." As the courtroom doors closed, fans and reporters carried a renewed faith in truth's power. The film hit theaters, igniting global debates on free speech. In Washington, Bondi fortified the DOJ's commitment to freedom, while Eastwood, in a Nevada field at sunset, gazed into the distance, his legacy rooted not in fame, but in unyielding courage. This Virginia saga mirrored America's struggles with power and free speech. Eastwood's film, exposing media manipulation, echoed debates over fake news. Whitaker's bias reflected efforts to silence dissent, While Bondi's intervention proved the justice system's strength when guided by principle, Marquez's uncovered emails showed truth's triumph through persistence, akin to investigative journalism. Eastwood and Bondi's lesson, stand firm, seek evidence, act strategically, resonated as a beacon. Truth, when defended, always finds the light.